Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Noah Turner Sports Podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing performance-enhancing drugs in sports and the dangers and the positives of performance-enhancing drugs in sports. Most importantly, I'm arguing today why performance-enhancing drugs need to be better monitored by sport leagues. I think performance-enhancing drugs have many good things about them, many positives, but I believe there are a lot of negatives to them as well. So I think that there needs to be some changes made within leagues to protect athletes and to protect the integrity of sports. So to start off, performance-enhancing drugs are known to be very dangerous, but they do have many good uses. One of that being is they can increase the speed a player can come back from injury. Just this past NFL season, Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles on the fourth play of the season. He tore his Achilles, which Aaron Rodgers, 39 years old. Most athletes that would completely end their career back in the day, they would never come back. But with modern sports medicine, Aaron Rodgers was cleared to play by week 14 of the NFL season. So an injury that used to be career-ending, he was able to make a full recovery within 14 weeks. He did not end up playing last year because the team was out of playoff contention, but he was cleared by doctors to play. So it is crazy the way sports medicine and certain painkillers, performance-enhancing drugs, they do have many positives that allow players to come back from injury faster. And I do not think they should be banned because that's a great thing, keeping players healthy, protecting players, bringing them back from injury. But there are some negatives that need to be prevented. Another positive is creatine is a performance-enhancing drug. That's kind of a misconception. Most people that hear performance-enhancing drugs, first thing you think of are painkillers, steroids, growth hormone. But simple things like creatine and even certain pre-workouts are also technically performance-enhancing drugs, in which creatine, that's something used by all athletes in sports. I used them. I played high school, a little bit of college soccer. I used creatine, pre-workout, all that stuff. There's nothing really dangerous about it. It can be dangerous if it's used in too big of a dosage, and it could cause kidney issues and even potentially death if you were to take too much. But all athletes use it. It's a very safe thing. Even average people that just go to the gym use it, and I would not consider it dangerous. So there's kind of a misconception with certain performance-enhancing drugs that they're all dangerous and they're all going to kill you, which isn't necessarily true. I wouldn't say. I think there are definitely performance-enhancing drugs that are way more dangerous than others, but to clump them all into one category and say ban them all, I think is not a good take on the matter. All drugs and substances can be dangerous if they're not properly monitored. So I do not believe they should be banned completely, but I do think they need to be protected. Once again, another injury, that is an ACL tear. Back in the day, back in the 80s, 90s, NFL players, basketball players, if you tore your ACL, you were done. It would be multiple years, you'd be out, and even when you came back, you would never be the same. Nowadays, you can come back from an ACL tear in 8-9 months and be just as athletic, if not more athletic, than you were when you injured yourself. So sports medicine has came a long way, and I want to see it to keep developing, and performance-enhancing drugs are going to be needed in that process for it to keep developing. Performance-enhancing drugs, though, are very addictive and dangerous, so there's definitely dangers connected with them. Most leagues have banned the usage of performance-enhancing drugs, especially unmonitored performance-enhancing drug use. And, there's been players have died. Tom McCall, he was a safety for the Philadelphia Eagles. In 2008, he died of an overdose from painkillers that were actually prescribed to him by his team doctor. So even prescribed usages by the team doctors can be dangerous. It can lead to addiction, and it could even, in the case of Tom McCall, unfortunately, lead to death. And there's an article written by a man named Patrick Hubrey that claimed 40% of all NFL players use growth hormone. So that is 4 out of every 10 players in the NFL are using growth hormone without any type of not prescribed by team doctors, just unregulated use of growth hormone, which is very scary because that can lead to them using other things such as painkillers that could lead to addiction, that could lead to the same thing as Tom McCall. So it's a very scary thing for the player's own safety, and it's scary for other players. I mean, if all these players in the league are juiced up and on some type of performance-enhancing drug, then they're going to be hitting you hard, especially in, I use the NFL a lot in my examples, but like if a linebacker started taking some performance-enhancing drugs and he starts hitting harder, starts hitting the players harder, it's going to cause a lot of issues for other NFL players that are not taking those drugs. It's going to create an unfair advantage, and it's going to put other players at risk and in danger. So team doctors, like prescribing, like in the case of Tom McCall's death, I think they need to be I think they need to be monitored more by the actual league, because these team doctors, they're employed by the team. There's no organization, anything looking over them. It's just them prescribing drugs and painkillers and steroids and stuff. I think that needs to be better monitored, and I think teams need to be held accountable for when instances like Tom McCall happens. Teams need to be held accountable by the league, by either some people need to lose their jobs, or there needs to be punishment such as that team needs to be stripped of maybe draft picks. Something needs to change to protect the players. So that kind of leads me in. I also think leagues need to increase the punishment for players that use performance-enhancing drugs. So back in 2022 NFL season, DeAndre Hopkins, who South Carolina native, played football at Clemson, great player. He was suspended 6 games in 2022 for using performance-enhancing drugs. And if you ask me, I think that's not enough at all. I mean, the NFL's 17-game season, moving close to 18 games soon, and only 6 games for using performance-enhancing drugs, something so dangerous and something that creates such a competitive advantage. I think that's not enough of a punishment at all for that, especially comparing it to famous NFL player Josh Gordon, who was banned indefinitely by the league for marijuana usage. Now, I'm not trying to argue if marijuana should be legal or if it should be legal in sports, but I'll say this: marijuana does not create any, that I know of, any real competitive advantage. It is not nearly as dangerous as performance-enhancing drugs. So I believe that the punishment for performance-enhancing drugs should at least be the same, or if not more, than marijuana. Now, in my suggestion, if I was Roger Goodell of the NFL or Adam Silver for the NBA making these rules, I would say suspend players for 1 full year without pay. And I know that sounds very harsh, and some players would not like that at all, obviously. I mean, especially players that are making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, taking a year of payout from them, they'd be very angry. But I think that would set an example across the league to really scare players from using these performance-enhancing drugs, and it would scare them from even wanting to potentially get caught and take that year suspension and take that year without pay. So I think you almost need to scare them straight in a way, and some players make an example of, to make other players be like, okay, I'm not even going to touch these. I do not want my salary to get affected. And you got to scare the players a little bit, because, I mean, NBA player Wilson Chandler back in 2019, same thing, used performance-enhancing drugs without any type of prescription or anything, and he was only suspended 25 games, which, you hear 25 games, I think that's a lot. Of an 82-game season, that's nothing. I mean, for an 82-game season, only getting suspended 25 games for performance-enhancing drug use, I think that's kind of pathetic. I think the punishment needs to be way more increased. I think they need to look to the Olympics for proper punishment. So the U.S., back in 2001 through 2010, USA hurdler Dwayne Ross was supposedly using performance-enhancing drugs. I'm not sure. I think it was steroids. And the Olympics, what they did was they banned him for 2 years, and they went back and they disqualified all his results from the 2001 to 2010, any type of Olympic events. All his results were disqualified, which, it does sound harsh, but I think that's what you need to do, because that protects, one, it scares players, but also protects the integrity of the Olympics. That way you know that any results where he was maybe on steroids or any type of competitive advantage he had, they took those results, they disqualified him, they're no longer recognized by the Olympics. So I think that's a very good way to go about it, and I think that, one, it just one, it's going to scare other Olympic athletes to not want to do that because it will ruin any type of results they have, something they work their life for. I mean, I'm sure Dwayne Ross now regrets severely using those performance-enhancing drugs because everything he worked his whole life to get was disqualified and isn't even recognized anymore. So I think NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, major American sport leagues need to also look to this and be like, okay, we need to increase the punishment to protect the integrity of the game and to scare players from wanting to even touch these dangerous performance-enhancing drugs. So, and the thing is, I know I keep talking about how it protects the integrity of the game and stuff, and people are asking, well, how do performance-enhancing drugs ruin it? Well, basically, I mean, fans love to, one thing is, all fans love to compare players across eras. Like, there's talk shows, ESPN has several shows, like First Take, where it's basically just arguing what players are better. Like Michael Jordan versus LeBron James is a famous argument. Who's the GOAT, the greatest of all time? So, but if performance-enhancing drugs become too common in sports, there won't be any room for discussion. It'll just be people being like, well, LeBron's on drugs, LeBron takes steroids, so of course he's going to be better than Jordan. It's just going to ruin any type of comparison across eras. And also, I mean, if there's players on performance-enhancing drugs, it's going to hurt the integrity because, yeah, sure, you might score 50 touchdowns in an NFL season if you're on performance-enhancing drugs, but how much is that of actually your skill, and how much is that just because you have a unfair competitive advantage, So then it'll just cause people not to care, and if people don't care about the sport, then it doesn't matter. So they need to protect that integrity, protect that, so people don't say, well, I don't care, this guy's just on drugs. They need to change that. And one league that has kind of done this is the MLB by withholding Barry Bonds from the Hall of Fame. So if you don't know Barry Bonds, he's one of the greatest baseball players of all time, honestly. I mean, he hit 71 home runs in 2001, which is still a MLB record. He's a multiple-time MVP, but he's not in the Hall of Fame, which you hear that and you're like, okay, well, he should definitely be in the Hall of Fame, but it's suspected that he was using steroids, and so the MLB's keeping him out of the Hall of Fame, and they're doing this to protect the integrity of baseball because people are just going to be like, well, he broke all those records because he was juiced up. And is that true? We don't know. I mean, sure, I do believe if he wasn't on steroids, he'd still be a great player. I mean, obviously steroids aren't going to be able to make you just amazing, but it definitely increased his numbers, and I think the MLB made the right decision by withholding him from the Hall of Fame to protect the integrity of the MLB and to scare future players of doing performance-enhancing drugs because, they're not going to want to get caught using them and then one day not be let into the Hall of Fame because of a mistake they did when they were earlier in their career. So I think the MLB made the right decision. I mean, I do feel bad for Barry Bonds, and, I do think he is one of the greatest players of all time, but I think that the MLB did make the right decision by withholding him from the MLB, similar to why the Olympics disqualifying Ross's results. I think it just protects the integrity and scares other players, essentially. So I think that leagues, another thing they could do is create a performance-enhancing drug awareness course. So most leagues like the NFL, MLB, NBA, they have finance courses for players to take, because most players in sports, they're, other than the NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, most guys are either right out of high school or 1 year of college. So those guys, it's young guys, and they don't really know, they're not as educated as some other people would be, and so they don't know much better than, if a team doctor comes up to them and says, hey, start taking these, it'll make you feel better, they're going to listen to the team doctor. But, I think that they should take an awareness course. The league should require all athletes to take an awareness course that just teaches them of the dangers and potential repercussions of performance-enhancing drugs. It's similar to, they have a finance course that all players, I'm not sure if it's a forced course to take or if it's optional, but all players can take a finance course that just teaches them, kind of how to handle their money, which I think is a great thing. And I think they should do the same thing with performance-enhancing drugs. I would argue the performance-enhancing drug one should not be optional. I think it should be required for all athletes to take because, one, it will help them know the dangers they're running into, and it'll also, benefit the leagues. It'll protect them from any type of potential lawsuit if, when players come into the league, they have them take a course knowing, hey, this is the dangers of things that we're giving you. You know the risk, and so it will protect not just the players, but also protect pro sport leagues from any type of lawsuit or anything. But the biggest thing I think is that team doctors need to be held accountable the most. I think they're the ones. Yes, there are players going without even team doctors taking performance-enhancing drugs, and those people obviously need to be punished. But a lot of players, they're prescribed drugs, they're prescribed painkillers from team doctors, and I think the doctors need to be held accountable, because at the end of the day, the doctors are employed by the teams, and they have the team's best interests at heart. They're paid to get the players back on the field as soon as possible so the team can win games. They don't have the players' best interests at heart, and that's when incidents like Tom McCall happens, where team doctors try to give them too much, and players either get addicted or, like Tom McCall, unfortunately overdose. And I think that leagues need to crack down on this. I think there needs to be way higher monetization of these team doctors. I think there needs to be rules set in place, punishment set in place if a player were to die again or anything. I think teams need to be punished. I think draft picks, maybe take their draft picks, obviously fire the doctors. I think there needs to be some type of repercussions for these incidents to protect the players, most importantly protect the players and protect the integrity of the sports. So to conclude, I think performance enhancing drugs are a great thing. I think they have many valuable uses in sports, and I think they'll be a part of sports for the foreseeable future. But I think there just needs to be a couple changes made to protect the players in the leagues and to protect the teams. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day.